Hey guys, so before we begin, I thought I'd give you a high-level overview of what system was built. So we've got three main containers. We've got our airflow container, which I'm just going to represent by an A. Separately, we've got our FastAPI container, represented by an F. And we've got our Postgres database container, represented by a D. Now, this is a completely decoupled solution which uses a shared database, so it's got a single source of truth. The main purpose of FastAPI is to serve data to the client. Let's do client here. And it basically checks the database to serve database to the client. So it's all about reading data. Separately to that, we've got Airflow using an ETL approach in a DAG system to ingest data safely. So before we dive deeper, the important thing to notice here is that it's decoupled, but yet they still use a single source of truth, which is quite convenient. And they have like simple responsibilities. This is responsible for ingestion, and this is responsible for serving information to the client. As simple as that. Now, if we dive deeper into the Airflow ETL approach, we can look at it like this. The first step in the process might feel a little bit weird or redundant, but it will make sense if there are retries. And we basically run a clean function to make sure that our two staging data tables, one is called temp and the other one is called cleaned, are empty, so that there are no artifacts when we run this approach. Finally, the last data table is not a staging data table, it's the actual transactions data table. Now, the first step in the process is extract, right? So I'm just going to write extract. So we use pandas to extract the data from a mounted CSV. Now, there are probably better ways to do this. It all depends on the system and the architecture that we're using here. The assumption here is that we're using the same CSV, but we're updating that CSV every day before midnight. So every day at midnight, we run this process once. It's got a retry mechanism to retry 3 times if it fails, but it's basically reading what's inside of the CSV and then putting it into a data frame. And then from a data frame, it's then inserting this data with SQL, because SQL is a lot more efficient and it prevents round trips if we're going to try and do it in Python, for example, into the temporary data table. And it will make more sense now, because now we are running SQL operations to clean this data, which is part of the transformation step. And the transformation step is all about taking this temporary data that's now in the data table and cleaning it so that it's ready for the transactions data table. And we look to make sure that the date format matches, there are no spaces, there are no weird symbols, there are no dollar signs. I probably should include the pound sign symbol, but you get the idea. We do all sorts of transformations so that we can have clean data in the format we want that matches that of the transactions data table. Once the stage is complete, we then do the final step, which is called loading. We load the data into the transactions data table. Now currently, if something fails from the temp to the clean data table, we do nothing. We're not recording it anywhere. So this would be something that I should have included, but areas where we could improve the existing system. We could probably use one data table, but if you want, we could use 2 separate data tables if you prefer. I'd probably use one data table and have a separate column, but considering that these structures might be completely different depending on the CSV import, it might make sense to have 2 separate dirty data tables so that we can record all the rows that never got inserted. So for example, in the clean data table, one of the things it checks for is to make sure, before the clean data table, when we're running in the temporary data table, when we are running the operations to clean it, we make sure that there are no duplicates within that CSV. We accept the first and we ignore the rest. And this, at the moment, we're doing nothing with it, but it would probably make sense to record that so we are aware of that. And also, if like certain fields are null when they shouldn't be null, then we can record it in the dirty data table. Separately to that, you would think that the clean data table should almost always 100% go into the transactions data table because it matches it's been cleaned. But there's always an edge case where we might have overlooked something upstream over here based on the data insertion, and there could be a larger systemic problem. So for example, if the transaction ID over here matches one that's already here, it will be ignored, and we're not recording this anywhere. So it might make sense to have a data table just to record this, so that we are aware of this and we can improve the system moving forward. But eventually all the data goes into the transactions data table, and the process is almost complete. There's just one more function that runs it here. It's the clean function, which basically cleans both staging tables, the temporary and cleaned data table. And obviously, the reason why we've got a clean data table at the start of the process is if it fails at any point in the system and it retries, it makes sure there's no artifacts from the previous attempt, which makes sense. So that is the Airflow DAG part of the process. Let's move on to the FastAPI part of the process. So step one, we've got a client, right? So a client makes a request, and they are probably using like a web app or a mobile app, some sort of front end. And they are sending this request to a specific route. In this case, I think we're using, I'm just reading what the route is. It's called transactions user ID summary, right? So we got transactions user ID, that's dynamic, and summary. And when we send it there, we're sending it to the FastAPI backend. Now there's a few things that happen here. So the very first thing that happens is we've got 3 layers of security. The first layer of security is some CORS middleware, where we protect our data on the client against unauthorized domains. The second layer is essentially, it's called trusted host, which is basically very similar, except it's protecting your website against spoofing and phishing on the server level. I'm just going to type in trusted host here, so that's also a middleware. And the third solution, which is probably not fleshed out or ideal based on time constraints, we're using a security.py file, and this is basically checking that per IP address, there's never, if you make more than 100 requests within a minute, I don't know what the usual standard is, that's just an example, it will show you an error message, and it resets every minute. But this would obviously need to be better configured. Honestly, things I would like to do to optimize this, number one, I would say that you probably want to have users that have logged in, so that you can use that logged in user ID with the IP address, because IP addresses can be bypassed with VPNs and other methods. And attaching it to a user ID could be more efficient to protect yourself against abuse. And currently it's in memory, which means that the application resets, everything resets, which is not a major deal because every IP address that makes requests resets every minute. However, in a production environment like Kubernetes, where you've got multiple containers, it makes more sense to upgrade this to something like Redis to handle this. Currently, it's not using a lot of resources based on its scope, but even with that in mind, in production, I would move this to something that's more specialized like Redis. Once it's gone through this process, before it sends a request with FastAPI and SQL Alchemy, it first uses struct log, and we can go more in a separate video into detail when I review the code. It's been about a day or so since I've looked at it. But struct log essentially records when a request has been made. And now that we've got that specific exact time, we then validate the data. And we validate the data by making sure that the user ID is greater than 0. And if you included a date, start and end date, which are optional, the start and end date are in the valid correct format. Once that process happens, Then we use FastAPI with SQL Alchemy on the transactions data table to build a filter to filter out all information based on that user ID, as well as the start and end date option if they provided that, to get all the information we need. And then it runs various computations for average, sum, etc., etc. It works out all that information for you. And provided that there is information, it will then, from that step, it will then send that information back to the front end in a JSON format, which is super useful. And then after it sends it back in a JSON format, we've got struct log again, recording when the data was received for that specific request, which is super useful. So because not only does it tell us how long a request was made if there's some unusual activity, it could also give us insights if we're making requests but we're not getting, sometimes if we're not getting any responses back. So it's just a useful safeguard. And that is the general process with the FastAPI process. And to summarize back to the original point, we've got 3 containers: FastAPI for serving data to the client, which is completely decoupled and separated from ingestion, which happens with the Airflow container. However, they share the same database in a concise, simple way.